Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Let's do it. We're back on Friday.
We're back on a Friday.
On a Friday.
Tiffany, this is actually turning into Glee the musical.
Willing to take voice lessons if offered for free. All right. So we are going to talk about trauma-informed care.
We
Eric,
are.
What does that mean? What in the world does that mean?
It's a great question. I want to start off by saying that this episode I don't think would be triggering to anyone, just to be specific, because we're going to talk about like how we try to be trauma informed. But before I answer that question, Tiffany, I think that is what trauma informed care is. Like you and I give disclaimers on this is what we're going to talk about. You might not be in a place to listen about this. We will discuss these things. Like that comes from trauma informed care. Trauma informed care also just means that like we're having these discussions. So if you've scrolled Instagram recently and you see like an image blurred and you have to click to view, that's trauma informed. When we talk, there is no one set definition of trauma informed care, but if you're asking me like what is the actual working definition, it's policy and ways of interacting with the world trying to account for other folks' traumatic experience. That's a very broad umbrella. But like I want to give some examples of like what this is. So I'm a 6'5" man. Some of you guys may watch us on like YouTube, our clips, or see our clips, but some of you may just be listening. So I'm a 6'5" man. I don't walk up behind women ever. And I mean, very specific. I do not walk up behind people. I don't walk too close. I'm not going to do that because to me, it's like that's an uncomfortable situation that I can avoid by simply giving space. And why would I do that? Well, we all probably know the answer. There are folks who've had traumatic experiences, and that's kind of a unsettling situation for some folks. Other examples I have are that I work a lot with first responders or those who are veterans. They are going to sit on a wall posted up by a place where they can see all the exits. Like that's what they're going to do. So if I'm in a room with them, I'm going to allow them to have that seat. I'm going to make sure they have that space. But we just think of it as like a buzzword sometimes. And so this isn't because people are soft. This isn't because people can't handle things or we're getting softer as a society. It's just being kind. It's being respectful. So I have worked with veterans for a while, and one of the examples I like to share is, and I may get myself in some hot water for this, Tiffany. I can't stand fireworks. I think they're bullshit. I don't like them. I wish we did not allow it. I think it wasn't legal in Ohio to do them on your own up until a few years ago on the weekends of the holidays. I can't stand them, and they're very loud. So I've worked with real veterans who have gone overseas and been in war, and like the sound of a rocket, fireworks getting launched, very similar sounds. So they're trying to be in their home and they hear a. I'm not doing this justice. I've never been in war. I'm not trying to pretend to be, but it pisses me off that for like so many weekends a year or whatever, at all times, people need to go. Some pushback I've heard is like, yeah, well, people have a good time. It's like, yeah, people can have a good time, but why do we need to do that? That's not inclusive. So people may not be with me on this, but I think it's stupid. I think it's annoying. And I've had to walk through with veterans, like, how do we, like, where do you go, right? Like 4th of July weekend, where are you going? Because in Ohio, people can shoot them all over and you're trying to find a state. So it's like, it's just knowing, like, I think it's the unexpected thing too. So I'm just here of like, can we just set a range? Because even though it's like, oh, these days, these times, people do it like the whole week leading up to the whole week after, and it's just chaotic and it's like stressful, and the dogs hate it. Think of the dogs. Think of the
Not just
dogs.
the
Think of the
dogs, but
veterans.
like the neurodivergent
The
people
little
who like have
kids.
sensory issues. Yeah.
I can't stand fireworks. I will throw down. I hate fireworks. If fireworks have no haters, I've been gone. Like I am a hater of fireworks. I think they're stupid, and I think drone shows are the way to go.
I agree. I will say though, the golden ones where like they look like little golden sparkly showers, they are pretty. I won't lie, they're pretty. I'm like, man, if only they could be not dangerous, not loud, and just little pretty golden sparkles through the sky. Fantastic.
Well, maybe I've answered my own question, Tiffany. We just need to switch to drone shows and not fireworks, because that will not have the same sound. But also, I guess
This
someone
is
will be
true.
like, well,
They can
drones
be.
have been used in war too.
There are some crazy drone shows that I've seen. I'm like, man, these things put fireworks to shame. Like with what you can do with drones.
They do. They do. Trauma informed is just including other people's experiences. And I actually spoke about this to a graduate counseling course this week. And I actually got choked up, and it hit me out of nowhere. And we were with this very similar conversation you and I are having, Tiffany, right now about trauma informed care and supervision. And I started talking about women in recovery. And I've not worked as much in my career with women versus men impacted by the disease of addiction or recovery. But I actually cried in front of this group of 40 people, which is something embarrassing about. But it just hit me, because I hadn't talked about this for a minute, that there are these women going through addiction and they are getting exploited because of that vulnerability and how they're trying to survive, and they're getting trafficked. And I got really upset, because it's like, us as counselors, or I think any decent human being, they're going to see a need and be like, oh, let's try to help that person. But there's these people who see that need and then they leverage it to get something out of it for themselves and exploit these folks. And I find it really sickening. I mean, I think all of us are sickened by human trafficking, other than maybe those who are doing it. But that's what I mean to talk about, is that for me, that discussion came up because it's like I was really mindful of how I'm interacting with those women when I was interacting with them. I was giving them lots of space. I wasn't coming up to them. If there were female staff available, those were the staff interacting with them, not me. I only was kind of interacting if all the female supervisors were, a supervisor was needed and the female supervisors were otherwise preoccupied. Then I was involved and still giving those precautions. And so that's what trauma-informed care, I think, really looks like on a day-to-day basis. It's just being inclusive of other people's experience, trying to honor those experiences, trying not to use thoughtless language, and just being just downright insensitive. And so I think, we could talk about humor and comedy, and there's dark humor and sometimes folks trying to cope. And I'm not anti people trying to cope, but there are things that should just not be acceptable. And there was a situation with a client I had. It's very common to use the word trigger. We talk about it here. When I talked with them and I was trying to do some EMDR screening with them, we ran into a situation where this is a trigger warning. Their father had died by suicide with a firearm. And so every time I used the word trigger to try to do EMDR screening, that's what they were picturing. They weren't picturing what we were trying to work on. So we had to change the word to activator. So these are some of the practical examples I have of trauma-informed care. Like, it's just making things work for people, removing some barriers.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question.
Go for it.
Can I be trauma-informed without any form of training if I'm just following the principle of including other people's experiences?
Yes, I think we can be trauma-informed without, because I think we gotta we got to be careful about gatekeeping. So here's something I would think about is maybe like community wisdom or folks who've just kind of understood. I mean, I go back to like World War I, and they called it like shell shock fatigue or like battle fatigue, or, you could just go back on just that very simple way about war and terms for things. And so people were trying to be very kind. There was this understanding of, oh, these aren't air quotes weak people. It's folks who have gone through something. So yes. Do I think you can be trauma informed and not have a trauma informed training? Yes. I'm sure there's many medical providers who are trauma informed and have not had an explicit training. I'm sure there's kids who are trauma informed being very sweet without. I would say though, there are many people who have not been trained. I would say maybe just as many who have not been trained, and they could benefit from that because they don't realize what they're doing may be problematic. Um, I go into the sense, if we go on a path of medical trauma and acknowledging that that's a real lived experience for many people. I mean, Tiffany, you and I know how many clients we've sat with and they have that just specific to therapy, not even just the healthcare system. Like we've got to honor that. So if, someone comes in and tells me, well, my last therapist was really bad and this is what happened, it wasn't okay. And I'm just like, well, you probably just didn't understand what they said. Well, that's not trauma informed. Like that being my immediate response. That's okay that I may think that, but for that to be my go-to response and let that be, that's not trauma informed. I think about religious trauma. And so like I may have really good intentions that I go to church and I want to invite my friends to come to church with me. That is not a bad, evil thing. But if I invite someone and they say no and I do that church stuff, I'm like, oh, are you sure? Oh, just come this one time. Or, oh, we have great coffee. Like now I could be re-traumatizing someone who has that lived experience with religious trauma. And now I'm not being trauma informed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I don't have science for me right now with data and like this is the percent, but I would argue there's about half the people not trained who are doing a good job and half that aren't. But I just look at like social media and like the discussion I see around, this is a big topic. So I'm going to just throw in, we're going to talk about maybe like fertility for just a second. So if you're not wanting to hear specific conversation around that, I really feel the need to give this heads up because I don't want anyone experiencing grief or trauma related to that to feel like that this comes out of nowhere. When I get on social media, and again, I'm a therapist, and so I've got my therapist algorithm that's I'm sure steering. I see people really openly talking about their grief with miscarriages, with their IUI journeys, their IVF journeys. And I see people even when they're putting like pregnancy announcements or birth announcements, like I'm seeing more and more every month, like more people being like, if you're in this journey or rainbow baby or all these terms that like relate to this. And I think there's just this big acknowledgement for folks that may be dealing with what is such a painful experience. And I think that's trauma informed. So I don't think everyone on Facebook has had a trauma informed care training, but I think some people are understanding, like that it's not a prank for April Fools to announce a pregnancy. And that's a prank. That's very painful and not something to joke about. So that's where I want to give real examples of that where like, I don't mean to bring up people in my personal life, but like I think of my family, I think they're very trauma informed, but I know they've not gone to like a trauma informed conference or a training class. Like, but maybe I've had a conversation with them or someone else has had a conversation and they're very mindful. So I probably just like went on a huge tangent, Tiffany, but like I said before we started, I could just go on and on about trauma informed.
Yeah, and that's valid. I guess something it's not trauma informed. Well, it is and it isn't. Like hearing you talk about like your therapist algorithm and the things that you're seeing and kind of noticing that difference between when someone is trauma informed and when someone might not be. I kind of felt called out because I won't lie to you, my algorithm is flooded with Pokepia and Pokemon and like all the absolute nerd stuff
Boo!
you
No,
could
I'm just kidding.
imagine.
Boo! No, I'm just kidding.
So whenever you
I'm
talk
just
about your
teasing.
therapist algorithm, I'm like, mine's a
But that's
little
good
bit.
though. Well, no, but I do stop, and that's what I mean. I stop when I read those and I see captions, and they probably the algorithm for sure knows, okay, that's a baby picture, and then there's content or different use of emojis or but doesn't make me better. I mean, I don't mean to be like virtue signaling or something like that, but it's more of like just kind of acknowledging what it could be
Mhm.
or is or an experience. But no, we need different options. We need
Mhm.
different opportunities. So
Yeah.
that's all I think. But I mean, and also like I'm trying to. There's no way to have this conversation, in my opinion, and not be real. But I also want to protect the anonymity of like my personal life friends who have not signed up to be um, in a podcast episode. So I'm trying, but I think of there is one example I can think of in the last few years where there was someone I know that kept, yeah, I got to be really careful how I tell the story. This person in my social orbit was putting things back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and joking about their partner being pregnant. Um, People kept commenting that that's not funny, but this went on for a long time, like 6 months. That person eventually did get have their partner get pregnant, but it just stands out to me very clearly because it was just so many people that I know were not in like a trauma informed training and but like commenting like, hey, that's not okay. Hey, really, like let's talk. Like please stop doing this. Um, so while that one person was completely being not trauma informed, so many people in the social orbit were like, hey, not okay, stop. And that's what I see a lot more of is like shared understanding. But there's the discussion though, is we can never stop being trauma informed. Like I can't stop and say, okay, Tiffany, the weekend's here. I'm good. I've done enough being trauma informed. Like you can't ever stop, just like you can never stop looking for maybe signs of abuse in children, or maybe never stop being like someone that's looking to de-escalate a situation. Like I think it's kind of like a mindset. It's a way of being. It's a way of maybe acknowledging other people's lived experience, whether that's like a trauma they have with the healthcare system or the legal system or specific smells or experiences. I mean, that's where I think we get lost. That's where I think, honestly, though, I hear people being like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. Or what I hear a lot from my fellow healers in healthcare. It's like, well, we've done a lot of these trainings. We've done a lot of this. Like, we're trained enough. I know enough about that. And I'm not saying I need to go to a conference every day, but I argue I can never stop being trauma informed. I can never be trauma informed enough. There is always a group I don't understand. There's always a population I could be better to equip myself with. I don't like that. I think you can be trauma informed like as a skill, but I don't think you can like acquire it like I'm CPR trained and I'm done. Even CPR, if we go with that for a second, you have to recertify every 2 years because you got to keep growing, you got to keep going. And so I think something as big as being trauma informed, um, yeah, I think it's a huge skill. Um, I think we need to get more comfortable supporting people impacted by trauma. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And that just gave me like the grossies when people say that like, oh, I'm trauma informed enough. I'm like, that one feels hard to rationalize because how do you become trauma informed, quote unquote, enough when everyone's experiences are so uniquely their own?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, I was just curious as to how one can say they're quote unquote trauma informed enough. Because if trauma informed means taking into account other people's experiences, then inherently you're always trying to be more trauma informed, because everyone's experience is inherently their own experience, and no two experiences will ever be the same.
No, I mean, that's like, oh, I've worked with one person in addiction, I've worked with all of them. It's like, no, or, yeah, I get that it's overwhelming. The work is overwhelming. It can be really draining and challenging, but yeah, we can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I do worry about like, what does the world look like if we're like, oh, I'm trauma informed enough, or I'm this and that, and this and that. It's like, I think it's like, why it doesn't cost us anything other than some energy, and maybe time. And so I would argue like we all can do more to serve our communities, our families, our friends. But yeah, I just think it's a thing. Like, I just think it's, I think it's a thing. I think it's a thing they're doing at schools. And, just how do they look for signs of trauma? How do we spot signs of trauma? How do we be inclusive of how we have discussions with people? When do we have a discussion? So like, I really do think this is things the world is doing. But yeah, so this has been a very general overview of trauma-informed care. What we're going to do in our next episode is really dive into like how Tiffany and I as counselors bring that trauma-informed piece into therapy. We'll probably talk about some other things, but that's all I have for today.
Yeah. Till next time, keep growing, and we'll see you guys around.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.